everybody. Welcome to Board Game Breakfast. It's been a great week. This past week, I've been in Niagara Falls, New York, at the Gathering of Friends, talking to a lot of designers and publishers and seeing games that are coming out in 2017 and 2018, really. We have some blogs that we'll talk about our experiences, but we're not here just for fun. We're here to see these games, to play as many games as possible so that we can review them. We got some early copies of some games that we'll be talking about as time goes by. We're going to be, again, it's a full week of reviewing games, so don't worry about that. I'll be doing a live Q&A today at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I hope to see some of you there and then. Also, don't forget, each week, there's two things a lot of people don't know about Dice Tower. One is we do an audio podcast. If you like our video podcasts, you can find them. You can find them in audio form at dicetoweraudio.com. But me and my co-host Eric Summer also do a podcast each week on Tuesdays. You can find all this information at dicetower.com. Anyway, let's get to the news. All right, first, Mayfair has announced a few things. First of all, from Phil Walker-Harding, who's made some really great games. They have a tile-laying game, kind of like a Tetris one, like Cottage Garden, Patchwork, that sort of thing, called Baron Park, which actually is going to be called that in English and German, but it's about bears. And they've also announced a reprint of Iron Dragon. Now, Iron Dragon is part of the Cran Rail system where you draw, but there's a couple things. First of all, if you notice from the art here, it really looks good. I mean, they really make this look better. The Cran Rail systems has been pretty bad looking, honestly, over the years. So hopefully this is the start of a new set of these, a new, much better quality set. They're really fun games. And this is the only one that's in a fantasy universe. It's called Iron Dragons because the trains that look like dragons and stuff like that. But it still plays pretty much the same as the other ones. True Dungeon, that live RPG LARPing experience at Gen Con and some other conventions, is coming to Origins. So they're going to be there and running their events there. CMON has announced, this was part of their, they announced in their Rising Sun Kickstarter that they are going to be doing Zombicide Black Plague Green Horde. So you're going to have zombie orcs and zombie goblins and things like that. Plaid Hat Games has announced a new two-player card game, tactical card game. Think Summoner Wars. It's called Crystal Clans, and they really haven't told us more about it other than showing off some of the artwork, which you can see here. But I'm excited about that because I'm a big fan of Summoner Wars. AEG has announced some mixed stuff like the Fantasy Rogues Gallery. This is an expansion to their dice game. Quined there has a series of games. I think they're numbered, actually. And this number 20 is called Halloween. It's just a game about you are some demon lord or blood prince or whatever, summoning ghosts to go around and scare people and fight other people's ghosts. Probably a heavier Euro game. Days of Wonder has announced Ticket to Ride Germany. Now, just so we understand where this is at, Ticket to Ride Markland came out several years ago. That was on a German map. And you had passengers, tokens, and you'd move them around. It's my favorite version of Ticket to Ride. They came out with this in Germany, Zugum Germany, and it was just the map. They didn't have the passengers. Then they added an expansion to it that added the passengers back in, but in a different way, where they were like meeples, and when you connected two routes, you could take meeples, and whoever had the most meeples of different colors would get it. Well, that expansion's being packaged together to make Ticket to Ride Germany, and that will be coming out from Days of Wonder. WizKids has announced DiceBot Mega Fun. This is a dice game where you're rolling dice and then grabbing cards and building a robot to fight other robots. And they've also announced that they've renewed the Star Trek license, so they'll still be making Star Trek stuff for a long time to come. Rune Wars has announced an expansion. I think Rune Wars came out last week. First expansion is going to be the Latari Elves. We'll see how well this miniatures game does. Rio Grande has announced Bonanza the Duel. This is a Bonanza game for two people. What else? That's all I know. And Steve Jackson has released their 2016 report to the shareholders, which was actually interesting because they talk about the different mistakes they made. They're very blunt about that and what they're trying to do for the future. They're still obviously a Munchkin company. They released their top selling products, and numbers 1 through 6 were Munchkin products. Number 7 was Simon's Cat. Numbers 8 through 18 were more Munchkin products. Then number 19 was Illuminati, their old card game. In fact, Ogre, the reprint of Ogre, the 6th edition, nice one, that was actually 29. So now you know how much Munchkin does well for the Steve Jackson games. All right, well, that's the regular news. Let's check out what's going on in the crowdfunding world.
Happy breakfast, everybody. It's been week, so let's get going with our crowdfunding roundup. In peak oil, the world's supply of oil is running out, and players are vying to get as much as they can and use those profits to invest in other technologies to ensure they control the energy market of the future. Workers can be assigned to tasks like drilling and shipping, buying startups, and promotional campaigns. And the clever majority mechanism for those workers means that there's competition for the different action spots. The set collection comes into play with the cards you collect, from the startup cards that are worth points based on a tech tree, and oil fields that increase the value of certain technologies. There's also a bit of push your luck when you're forced to draw oil barrels that may lead to a PR crisis, which means a point penalty and a negative turn effect. I also really appreciate the sharp look of the game thanks to Heiko Gunter, who may be best known for his work as the artist on the Glory to Rome Black Box. A copy of Peak Oil takes a pledge of $40 plus shipping. Smiths of Winterforge is a game about dwarven blacksmithing. Players will be traveling through Winterforge, hiring crew, and expanding skills and abilities. You can buy new raw materials or try to forge legendary items. You'll be completing contracts for items as you go, and a royal contract might give you an extra bonus. You do this by collecting the different components to forge the item, and these items grant you dice that you get to roll to determine if your forging is successful. You can take loans to help you along the way, but make sure you have them paid off before the end of the game to ensure you have the greatest reputation to win the game. Smiths of Winterforge takes a pledge of $49 Australian dollars plus shipping. From the team who brought us paperback comes hardback, which takes deck-building word games to the next level. Full disclosure, I have a prototype copy of this one, and I've played it. Hardback keeps the core mechanism of deck building with letter cards used to build words, but it adds book genres that create synergies for card combos that feels a bit like Star Realms meets paperback. Cards can be flipped for wilds, and the new ink mechanism adds a touch of push your luck to the game by setting you up for long words or a turn lockdown. And there's a new type of card that's a persistent letter that can trigger combos, but it's available to opponents as well. At the time of this recording, 3 mini expansions, including a cooperative mode, had been unlocked as well. And if you're a paperback fan, there's an available 80-card expansion for that game that you can get too. You can get a copy of hardback for a pledge of $27 plus shipping. Exceed seeks to capture the pace and energy of arcade fighting games. It's quick playing, with the game taking just about 15 minutes, and a single box includes 4 totally different fighters. Each fighter has unique attacks and strategies, and in this campaign there are 4 different boxes of Exceed for a total of 16 available fighters. A long central board is set up, and battle strategies include manipulating range and choosing when to strike versus when to flip your character to their Exceed side. Power and speed all come into play, and of course, characters have boost abilities to mix it up. This edition of Exceed also introduces Level 99 Games' new world that they're calling the Seventh Cross, which is an alternate 1920s horror-inspired setting full of gothic inspiration. You can get a single set of Exceed for a pledge of $25 or get all 4 sets for $80. Crosstalk is a party game from the team behind the excellent Stockpile. In Crosstalk, players split into 2 teams and each selects a clue giver. Those clue givers pick the same key word that they're trying to get players to guess, but each clue giver gets to give their own team a secret single clue word. This is vital because it's this word that's used as kind of a secret key to all the public clues that will be given. Clue givers go back and forth, giving a public clue to the group. The trick is that your opponents get to guess after your clue. That means you're trying not to give too much away with your public clues, and you're really trying to leverage that secret clue as kind of a guide on how to interpret your public clues as much as possible. So Crosstalk brings a bit of codenames and a bit of Spyfall, and results in a unique game for larger playgroups, and you can get a copy for $29 plus shipping. And last but not least, our friends at the Secret Cabal are running their first Kickstarter, full of insubordinate nonsense and producing great quality board gaming content for years now. They've already blasted their primary goal of raising enough money to let Jamie work on making content his full-time job. But you can still jump on board to help them achieve their larger goals, or just get in on some of the really cool promos that they've set up. And in a unique benefit, the Secret Cabal has created an alternate reality game that will play out over time that's full of missions and puzzles. You can support the Secret Cabal for any amount that you'd like, but promos start to kick in at the $45 pledge level. Okay, that's all I've got for you this episode. Hopefully something caught your eye. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week.
Hey, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, and we are wrapping up my recent miniseries on board game fan art. Does it exist? And how can one spot it in the wild? Well, even with all of the various forms of board game fan art that I've already discovered and discussed during this series, there is still one more format that I think is worth exploring. And that is the gloriously geeky world of comic strips based on board game culture. It's such a wonderfully niche interest that I'm surprised how much of it already exists. And if you're wondering where to begin because you want to check out some comics about board games, well, here is a sampling of board game sequential art that's an essential start. First up, there's Semi-Co-op, which is a webcomic primarily about board games, which was started by a couple that has since become two board game enthusiasts, Rachel Kremer and Heinz Havinga. Semi-Co-op is updated every Monday on their website, and, as of the time of this recording, is still going strong. Then there's NPC Comic, which is a series about the gaming lives of a couple 30-somethings and their cats. Common themes in NPC Comic include World of Warcraft, tabletop gaming, and, of course, gamer cats. Now, this comic was published regularly from 2009 through September 2016 by Mary Varn. The comic Up to 4 Players is about a group of friends that are playing a tabletop role-playing game and the stories and moments that happen to them as a result. Up to 4 Players is produced by the team Aviv and Aaron. Tiny Wooden Pieces is a webcomic about board games and other pop culture fun stuff, but mostly about board games. Tiny Wooden Pieces is published each Friday by Colin O'Mahony and Eileen Cudmore. And to wrap up our list, here's a few honorable mentions. There's Call Us Hard Gamers, which is a weekly, minimalistic webcomic that's ran for several years by a creator named Zod. And of course, there's Penny Arcade, which is often not safe for work and mostly focuses on video games, but it does sometimes dip its toe into board game culture. And finally, there's After School Dice Club, which is a Japanese manga about a board gaming club. So, if you weren't already familiar with these comics about tabletop gaming culture, well, hopefully there's something in this list that'll spark your interest. And, as always, let me know which comics out there I've inevitably neglected to include in this list. I'd love to check them out, so let me know in the comments below.
Hey, this is Mike with the Board Game Makeover. A couple months ago, I was at Gamma, and I got to go around and see all the things that were coming out, perhaps, from the various publishers and game manufacturers. Well, here's something that kind of caught my eye, and I was very surprised about. There's a game publisher there called Perplex. And they make these little tiny games. Little. That's the size of a gum box stick thing. Well, I don't know how a game can be that little. So I bought it to find out. And I also found out that they have Series 1 with 8 different games in there, and Series 2 with 8 different games. They're all made by Chris Handy, and they're all 30 cards like this. Crazy! But the guy's a genius. How do you make a game with 30 little cards and each game is different? I was impressed. But I also realized the golden opportunity to give this a board game makeover. So I took these cards and I made them super tiny. No, I'm just kidding. I made them bigger. Because sometimes the little cards are great for travel, but sometimes when you're just playing at home, you want to have larger cards. These are the cards that come in a gum stick sized box called Jim. This is just one of the 16 games that they currently have. Well, these cards are very small. They're 1 inch by 3 inches. So that's about a gum stick size. So what I thought, well, what size would really make most sense for a larger table? So I decided to go with tarot size cards. And this is what they kind of look like. They're a little stretched, but the thing is, though, you can play them, and they work really good. So I can keep this one for my travel, and I can keep this one for when I go to game night. So if someone comes up to you and says, excuse me, do you have a stick of gum? You just say, no, but I have something very similar. Would you like to play a game of rum? If Chris Handy from Perplex Games can create amazing gum stick size games with 30 cards, what could be next? Maybe a little Gloomhaven, Cosmic Encounter, Pandemic Legacy, or even Twilight Imperium. That's what I would like to see. Thanks for watching the Board Game Makeover. We'll see you next time.
Hey folks, so what's coming from the Dice Tower this week? Well, first of all, before we get into that, I want to explain, people are talking about our lighting and our sound and our sets. Remember, we're still building this. This is a month process, so I know our lighting and our sound are not perfect yet, but we are still working on it, okay? We just didn't want to shut content down for, while we're doing this. So our top 10 last week, the lighting was a little bit off. We're working on that. We're trying to get it back on. These things will get better as time goes by. This week I'll be taking a look at one of some of the new escape room games from Cosmos. We have like I said, we have our new version of the Dice Tower audio podcast, 502. That's shorter. You're going to see a lot of reviews from me, Sam, and Z. We'll probably do a back talk about what we thought about the Gathering of Friends and kind of what we're seeing and excited about in the industry. You'll see a couple blogs from the Gathering of Friends coming out this week. So there's just a lot of exciting things, really. There's a lot of videos. We have a new video series about Kickstarter videos, which is going to be starting possibly this week, as soon as I can get that together. So just a lot of cool things coming your way. Of course, you can find all this at Dicetower.com.
Hey everyone, it's
Lunchtime! So today we're taking a look at the game Charizard. So this was designed by Yuo, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, and it was published by Osprey Games. It plays 1 to 2 players, which is different, in 10 to 20 minutes, and I believe it's for ages 10 and up.
So in Charizard, the goal is to basically tell a story. The Emperor is wanting you to tell them a story, and we do that not by using a storytelling mechanic, but by playing these tiles on the tableau. You can play single player or cooperatively with 2 players. And simply put, we have a number of columns of tiles. Each tile has 6 places around it where another tile can be placed. And in the next column, you offset it by half. So basically you get two adjoining tiles on either side. In order for the tableau to score, you play till all the tiles are out, and then you will flip over any tile that has a lower value tile to the right of it. So if you played a higher number on the left, then that one would basically get flipped over at the end of the game, and you wouldn't be able to score with using that tile. And the goal is to basically make sure you have at least one available tile, so you have a path to go from left to right all the way through, and then you'll score based on adjacencies of tile colors.
I like the art in this game, it's so pretty.
It kind of mixes the whole tarot feel with the fairy tale, so I thought that was really unique. And what I really particularly love is how challenging it is, because if you can't play it where you think you want to, you actually have to exchange. So you have to pull a tile back, play one out, and then still draw one. So then you have to play 2 the next turn.
That's hard when you have to play the 2. Yeah, I find that one tough. And I like the fact that you can play it solo. So if you have a lonely lunch and it's just you, you can pull this out and play. That's still fun.
Exactly. If everyone else is sick at home, well, you still got a game to play.
Exactly.
Provided you have a score, then you'll be rated basically at the end of the game based on how high you scored, and the Emperor will tell you how well your story came across.
I think we were like average.
That first time, though, our story was not good. But the second time, we kind of got a good story going.
Gives you something to strive for. So that's it for today, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hello
everyone, my name's Annette, and you might know me on social media as Netters Plays, and today on Applied Mechanic, I'm going to feature a game mechanism that I really enjoy in this game called Garden Eel Go. Now in Garden Eel Go, they use this really unique game mechanism known as voting. So let me show you a little bit about the game. You see there's 3 columns with 3 different hunters on top of each column. What we're trying to do is collect these different eels, which will give us positive points. If, however, an eel that we collect with a shark next to it will turn the next card that we collect into negative points. So how do you collect these eels? Now every player is also going to have a set of these hunter cards, just like the ones on top of these columns. Every round, a player is going to pick and choose a card secretively. One player is going to be the watchman, and they get to place this boat on one of these hunter cards in order to block that column. If a player picked the same column as the watchman, they get no cards. Any player that picked a different card than the watchman will go ahead and collect some eels. So as you can see, the voting mechanism in this game is fairly simple to understand because all players are only picking from one of the 3 cards. Now, the gameplay itself is very interesting how it interacts with that mechanism because, of course, the players want to go to the column with the most amount of eels. However, the watchman also knows that, so they can easily place their boat and block them from getting those cards. However, that's when the psychology between players easily takes place. Because the watchman also knows they want to collect the most amount of eels, they might think that they'll go for the lower cards to play it safe. Now that becomes a real treat in the game. So if you're interested in this game, you should definitely check out Garden Eel Go.
New game! New game! Time for rules! On page 3, paragraph B, it is clear that it says that a wound can attach and be used as a perpetual...
Let's just play. I don't need the rules.
But it's unfair, I haven't got to the juicy...
I'll learn as I go.
Okay, I guess the game is over? The game is over? So...
I think so.
How many wounds do you have? I got 47 wounds.
I have 1.
1, so... I guess you...
I win.
Yeah! I teach her, she wins. Today we're gonna tell you something about a hidden gem. I'm gonna try to explain in a nutshell the rules, while Molly...
I'm gonna teach you how to win.
What's the name of the game, Molly?
The name of the game is Nightfall by AEG.
Woo! Nightfall is a competitive, brutal, let me say that again, brutal deck building game in which players start with the same starting decks and then acquire new cards from a common pool and from a private exclusive pool, which is drafted at the beginning of the game. The goal of the game is to give your opponent as many wounds as possible, so-called wound cards. At the same time though, as you injure your opponents, you make him stronger, because wound cards give you special unique abilities. At the end of the game, whoever has the least number of wounds wins it. The core of the game is based on a chaining mechanism. Each card has a main color and 2 linking colors, represented by a big moon and 2 small moons. In order to play a card, its main color has to match one of the linking color of the previous card played. Your opponents get a chance to attach to your chain, and so on. And then, the chain resolves in reverse order. Molly.
I'm gonna tell you 3 things that I think will help you win. First, don't get cards that you think are cool. Get cards that will work well with your deck. Make sure you acquire colors that link, as well as get a good balance of actions and minions. 2, each card has a unique bonus ability called a kicker. Make sure you acquire cards that will activate this kicker. And lastly, as in all games, make sure you adapt to your opponent.
Feels easy.
Change strategies.
Thank you, Molly. So, what shall we do now?
Why don't we play Nightfall?
No! I don't want to lose again! No!
One of the things about Hollywood, right, is that they're always making sequels, or, you know, like, hey, this movie was great and you know the second version of it's going to come out. And the sequels are usually not as good as the first one. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they make a whole series, and the series will go on for a really long time. And the series dip in quality, and people say, is there no original idea in Hollywood? They're remaking old movies, they're making sequels, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing can be true in the board game business, right? You make a very popular game and you make a sequel or an expansion to that game to some degree. There's not very many sequels, but or another game in that line. And people yell and complain about that. But why do companies do these expansions? Well, first of all, the company already knows that people like the game, right? You know people are going to enjoy the game, so it's kind of a surefire thing. With a new game, you're not sure if people are going to like it or not. It's a tried and true product. You can add this thing and you know it will sell. A lot of these games come out with product lines, and I'm not always the biggest fan of a product line like, there's so much stuff coming out for X-Wing, there's so much stuff coming out for this LCG, but I don't have to buy all of it, and that stuff is there available for people, and some people want to play the same game system all the time. They don't want to learn new systems. I love learning new games. I want to play new games all the time, new games, but a lot of people don't want to do that. An expansion is a safe way for them to say, hey, this game here, I already know how to play it. There's a few new cards, a few new rules. That's easy to jump into. Or it's a way for a company to sell a very expensive game in smaller chunks, right? Like, I don't want to buy everything for X-Wing, but I could buy $400 worth of game over time. New games are a gamble for companies to do. And it's easy to say, hey, you should be taking chances, you should be making new games all the time, but it's not your livelihood, it's these companies' livelihood, right? They want to make money, and it's kind of like guaranteed money. It's not always, but it can be guaranteed money to do an expansion. And super fans, people who want everything and want this and that, it's always easy to forget that you're not everyone out there, or because you think that you are. And we do have a ton of games. You might say, hey, this company needs to take more chances. Well, guess what? Companies are taking more chances all the time. They're mostly on Kickstarter right now, but that's fine. You can go buy tons and tons of new games. So, yeah, I might sit there like many of you, and look at Fantasy Flight and say, man, I wish they'd stop making expansions for their existing game lines. But that is what people want. That is what people like, and it makes that company financially viable. There are other games who pick up the slack and try new and weird tested things. And so I can understand how people don't like when companies make expansions and things like that for a game. And it seems sometimes like, the company made this game, but they split the expansion off. But that's often for a good reason. It's a good reason that the base game is just a good, solid base game. It's streamlined, it's easy for people to get into. They bring the price point lower. Not everything is nefarious. Not everything is the companies being evil and snickering around in the background. So, yeah, I do understand not everyone likes expansions, and you're like, another expansion. But you got to realize for a lot of people, it's like, yes, another expansion. I love this game, and I can continue playing it. Sequels are maybe not the best thing in Hollywood. I just don't think they're as bad in board games.
Hi, Mike DeLisio from Solomode Games, coming to you this week from Ravenwood Castle in Ohio. This is a beautiful location. If you get a chance to visit, you certainly should. If you're anything like me, when you go on a getaway, one of the things you might like to do is bring along a game. I tend to look for games that have a solo mode, in case I'm the only one that's really interested in playing a game at that time. One of the games that I brought with me on this trip is Quests of Valeria. This is designed by Isaias Vallejo from Daily Magic Games. Quests of Valeria has been called Lords of Waterdeep, the card game. And I can definitely see why they go with that. It kind of scratches the same itch. It's a tableau building game where you try to build up the best guild. And one of the things that it has going for it is a beat your high score end game scenario. And I know that this is a controversial topic sometimes with solo gamers. A lot of people tend to have a win-loss condition as being something that they're looking for. And honestly, if I had my druthers, I tend to look for those as well. But if you're gonna have a beat your high score scenario for an end game, I would really suggest you do something similar to what they did here. On the rule book, they give you a score matrix. It gives you something to shoot for. A particular score will put you in a different ranking. and you can kind of see how well you did. And so if you're going to have a end game scoring scenario where it is a high score, I would really recommend to other publishers to give gamers something to shoot for. It makes it a lot more of an enjoyable experience. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.
Hi, my name is Jan and I'm from Spielhammer.de. Welcome to my first video for the Dice Tower. In this segment I will show you 3 games that I recently played. I will show you some video content of those games and talk about very briefly how I like them and what they are about. Hope you like it. Let's start. And we start right away with the Star Wars Rebellion. Very cool, very beautiful made Star Wars game. Great components. You basically play episode 4, 5 and 6 in this game here. It has a very good battle mechanism. I'm personally not so hyped about the game like a lot of other people, but still I think it's a good solid game with a length of around 3 hours. And now we have here Viceroy, a beautiful made card driven game with a cool auction mechanism. You bid for cards, you get the cards, put it in your rows, and it depends on which row you put the card, it will unlock a special ability on the card. Very cool. And here we have The Alchemist's very big heavy Euro game with an excellent app feature, and as you can see it's a beautiful artwork also here in this game. And that's it, I give back to me. Welcome back, I hope you found it a little bit interesting, and if you want to know more about those games, check out reviews on the Dice Tower, and if you want to have German reviews for those games, check out Spielhammer.de as well. There you will find for all those games reviews in German. If you like it or not, please let me know in the comments down below. I would be very happy to know your opinion on it, and hopefully see you next time. Bye bye.
For today's What's on the Shelf, we're going to be looking at not what's on my shelf, but could be on other people's shelf. I'm here at the gathering of friends, and we have here this is what's called a prize table. And on this, everyone who comes brings a game, and they stick it on the prize table, and at the end of the convention, they'll draw names, and people will get games off the prize table. Now in this case, the prize table is kind of stacked because some companies will bring in piles of games, but for the most part, it's done by people, right? And so in this case, I mean, the games have to be approved by somebody, so you can't just bring in a tiny game and walk away with a big one. Although you might bring a tiny game in and then add that to your bigger game. And some games are going to be better than others, and in some places if you bring in the best games you get to go first. And so there's all sorts of different games here laying around from different companies. Like that one looks really interesting, Professor Marbles, although that looks kind of a variation on Dr. Eureka. There's also some big, look at this, Buck Rogers. There's a copy of Gloomhaven. Some of these games, here's a very nice version of Flick 'em Up or the Hard to Find Air Pack. And so, if you can see, just all around, there's probably going to be more games added later today. But the idea of a prize table is one that makes a convention fun, because essentially you are paying the cost of a game to get another game. It's kind of like a big trade in some degrees, but it also adds a lot of entertainment. If you're running a small convention, I highly recommend doing one of these, because people like to get games anyway, and this would be a fun way to do so at a prize table.
Finding a topic for this week's segment has never been so easy, because they have finally arrived. 2 giant pandas on loan from China as part of the Chinese panda diplomacy. Wu Wen and Xingya have arrived their final destination, the Ouwehand Dierenpark in Rhenen in the Netherlands. The zoo has them in quarantine right now, but in a couple of weeks you can go visit them in their Chinese-themed enclosure, indoor and outdoor, and even has a refrigerator, complete with bamboo. This week I am playing a game that is just about this topic. This week I am playing Takenoko. In Takenoko, you would like to keep 2 people and 1 giant panda happy. First off, the panda would like to eat certain kinds of bamboo. The gardener would like to see those bamboos grow in a certain way, and the emperor would like to see certain types of landscapes. On your turn, you roll the weather die and then you get to choose 2 out of 5 actions. First off, you can make new lands appear. Then you can irrigate those lands. You can choose to have the gardener grow certain types of bamboo, or you can have the panda eat that bamboo. And the last possibility is for you to get new assignments to get more points. First person to get 7 assignments correct will end the game. Takenoko is a great family game and is also easy to teach to new players and people who are trying to get into our hobby. If you have it on the table, you will certainly get people to come over and see what that cuddly panda and that funny gardener are doing on your table. All the pieces are fun to build. I have the big box version that makes it even better, but it is a great game and I highly recommend you check it out. I will be in the snow for the next 2 weeks, so I hope to see you after that. Thanks for watching.
Hello again, Internet. Steve Tassi here, curator at Snakes and Lattes. We're at the College Street location in Toronto, and I am sitting down with award-winning designer Matt Leacock, the man behind Pandemic. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we are here to celebrate the release of your latest game, Mole Rats in Space,
That's right.
which, surprise, surprise, is a co-op game.
Shocking, I know.
Yeah. What is it about co-op games that draws you?
I find them a fun challenge because you have to kind of come up with an enemy that's worthy of the players, and all you have is like cards and cardboard and trying to come up with something that the players can defeat. I like that puzzle of trying to come up with like an artificial intelligence just using paper.
So we're here to talk about Mole Rats in Space, though, really. That's why you're visiting us. So tell me a little bit about your relationship with Peaceable Kingdom and how the game came about.
Yeah, so Peaceable Kingdom's a Berkeley-based company, so they're like in my neighborhood. I'm from the Silicon Valley, Bay Area, and one year, I guess it was last year, they came up to me and said, "Hey, could you do just a co-op version of Snakes and Ladders on a mandala board?" And I scratched my head and thought, wow, that sounds like a fun challenge, because making Snakes and Ladders fun may be kind of rough.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was watching looking at some of the ancient versions of the game. It's a really old game.
Oh yeah, it is.
Like Hindu Enlightenment or something
absolutely.
like that. And checking that out at the Museum of Childhood at the V&A in London, and just seeing the rich history of the game.
I would love to see that exhibit.
It's really cool. But so anyway, that was a starting point. And then the question was, well, how do you make something I was targeting like 5, 6, 7, 8, kids, and not make it too complicated, that it's overwhelming, you've got too many decisions, that the space is too large, make it really accessible, but still have interesting decisions. And so I pretty much used the same method I did for most of my games. I just tested it with younger kids. And for me, I'm going to have to play this thing over 100 times, and so I want to enjoy the process.
Absolutely.
So that was part of the fun, is making it not pandering to kids, making sure there was enough challenge there that, if you lose but you get closer each time, until the point where you actually do win, you feel really great about it.
What got you into designing games in the first place? Your first game came out in '95, I believe?
First game was Pandemic. The first published game.
Right.
Before that, it was me and my inkjet printer, running them off. I did 200 sets of a car racing game in 2000.
Right.
But that was
Lunatic Loop.
Wow, that's very good. Yeah. That got some introductions basically, and then I started working with people in the industry and getting feedback from people on Pandemic, and that really helped launch that off. But I've been doing games since I was a kid. I played a lot of really crappy games when I was young. And my uncle, Pat, was really into, hey, well, let's make something better. And so we'd flip the board over and try to make something that was more fun.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope the launch goes well. Thanks. And as always, we love to have you pay us a visit, so anytime you're in town.
Any excuse that I can come here is great.
All right,
thanks.
Thank you.
How complicated do you like your board games? Hi, I'm Chris Renshaw from the Boards and Swords podcast, and welcome to Role Playing, where I talk about RPG topics that might be of interest to board gamers. Today I'm continuing my series of why people don't play RPGs, And today I'm going to continue with the second thing I hear the most when people don't tell me why they don't play RPGs, and that is RPGs are just way too complicated. Again, this is another one I just don't get. I don't get this excuse at all. I don't get it. RPGs are not that complicated. Again, it's another one, just like board games. Board games get extremely complicated. You're talking about Euro games and stuff. RPGs, in comparison, are easy as pie. It's just some simple you roll dice, you add a few numbers, and that's it. Yes, you can play complicated RPGs just like you can play complicated board games. It's the same thing. Whereas there are a lot of RPGs that are basically just roll D6s, six-sided dice, and that's it. That's all the game. You have to do a little bit of narration and then roll a D6. That's a lot. I mean, D&D is fundamentally just roll a D20. Did you hit? Did you miss? All right, that's it. If you thought it was more than that, then it was just mainly just a bad perception that someone gave you at some point. But if that's what's holding you back, take a step back and read a rule book. See if it's that complicated to you or not. You might find some of them are a lot simpler than you think. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you've got any other comments or questions about role-playing games, make sure you post them down in the comments below. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
Board games! You know, those little things on your phone with the graphics and the buttons and... Wait, that doesn't sound right. Huh. Board game apps. That's a thing that exists. You know, some are good, some are bad. Like humans. But do they count? I was in a conversation once and it went like this. Have you played Ascension? I've played the app. So no then. No. Some games, even if the app is amazing, it just doesn't make up for playing the game with people. It's like a photograph of a puppy or a tame penguin. Penguins wild? Are they generally vicious? Like a photograph of a tame penguin. We'll go with it. You know, it could be a really good photograph, but you can't cuddle a photograph. But some apps kind of replace the cardboard version of the game completely. To a point where I'll straight up sell it. That thing's going on eBay. An Irem comes to mind. I'm never shuffling that deck again. And Ascension is one of the best apps ever. I played it loads and loads. I just don't need to own the actual game anymore. And the expansions are a lot cheaper. Just saying. Do apps count as playing the game? But I will also add this. My brother was addicted to the Carcassonne app when he lived in China. And now he's like a Carcassonne wizard that's just completely unbeatable. He's like a pool shark, but for small French towns. She's a little pig, like a penguin. Huh? Thank you, you wonderful people.
And that's another Board Game Breakfast, folks. I really appreciate you coming around. We'll be back in the studio this coming week. Like I said, reviews coming your way, some more publishers, top 10s, just lots of different things. We're always going to try to put out a lot of content for you. We got the rest of April and May, so just keep an eye on the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Tom Basso, and this has been Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vassell and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff in stock at CoolStuffInc.com.